Welcome back. It's cast on day for the Mahina Cardigan knit along, and I am happy to be casting on with you. I'm going to do the long tail cast on, and for my size, I'm going to need about 100, I think it was 101 stitches. So we all know it's a pain to try to do the, how much tail do you need? So that's why I've come up with the long tail cast on calculator, and you can grab that for yourself over on my website. I'll put the link down below in the video description or up here somewhere. If you have not swatched yet, it is important. I have preached it, preaching to the choir, but if you have, yay, applause for you, golf clap. If you have not yet swatched, do it first. The knitting gods will smile upon you if you swatch first. And if you're not sure what's up with all that, video description, there's a link down there for last week's video about swatching. Watch it. Take the time to go watch it. Pause this right now and go watch that first if you haven't yet. If you have, hooray! I'm happy for you and I'm proud of you. Excellent. So once you determine your size, there's no positive ease or anything built into this pattern. What I did was I measured a hoodie that I already liked the fit of, and then I came up with the size closest to that, and then I used my long fabric tape measure, and I went around and then I looked and was like, okay, that's whatever number of inches that was, and it's a little bit loose, and I like that, so that's how I picked my size. So it's helpful to measure something that you already have that you like the fit of. Lay it on your bed, measure that times 2 so you have the circumference, and then see what is closest. Okay, swatching is important, and I'm saying that again because I live in a very dry climate. I washed and blocked my swatch. I waited for like 24 hours, and then I measured. However, it changed again because as it dried more thoroughly, it changed slightly again. So let your swatch dry for 2 or 3 days at least, because I live in a super dry climate, and still you want to give it a couple days. If you live somewhere like on a coast, give it longer than that. Right, that's important. Several people have also asked, whatever needle size you choose, you're going to want to go that you're swatching for the largest size. So in the pattern, she recommends a US size 7 or 4.5 millimeter. And then for the ribbing or for whatever other thing she wants us to do, you go down 2 needle sizes. So whatever that is for you. If it's a 6, you'll go down to a 4. So just keep that interval, okay? What else? Swatching is important. Okay, I've said that about 47 times. You get the idea. Okay, the next thing I like to do is either print the pattern or use your knit companion if you enjoy using that. Go through all of the whole pattern, read through it first, and then circle or highlight, or however you're going to do it on knit companion or on a paper copy. Go through and make sure that you have all the correct numbers circled or highlighted for your size. That will minimize mistakes, and it just makes it easier as we go through the steps. So take 10 minutes and do that. Make sure you have everything marked or circled appropriately for the size that you've chosen, whether that's, the second pattern number in the second set of brackets or whatever that is. Just make sure you're consistent, double check your work, make sure it's all good. So it's helpful to get yourself set up to start with. Okay, let's cast on. I'm going to go use my cast on calculator and figure out how long my tail needs to be, plus 8 inches to hang on to and to weave in, and then we'll get started. All right, here we go with the long tail cast on. I have used the long tail cast on calculator on my website, and so I have a giant tail over here, plus some for my weaving in and hanging on to at the end. So there's my little slip knot at the end. If you don't want to use a slip knot, you don't have to. You can just wrap your yarn around like that. Make sure that your yarn tail is on the top and the working yarn comes off the bottom. And then I go up underneath and wrap just like I'm knitting and put the loop over the top. So I'll show you that a couple more times. If you're new to the long tail cast on, I do have a video just for that. That's down below in the video description also. So this is how I do it. It's just really easy. And then because I'm casting on 100 plus stitches, I'm going to put a marker every 20 or so. just so I double count as I go. And I know that I'll have the right amount when I go to start. Okay, so beginning the ribbing on row 1, which is going to be the wrong side, we're going to start with a purl 1. Then we're going to purl 1 through the back loop. So we're going to go to the, let me zoom in here a little bit for you. We're going to go through the back loop. So rather than coming in like this to the front loop, we're going to reach all the way around behind. Tilt your needle like this a little bit and reach around behind to get that back loop. Purl that. There we go. Because we want to create this 1x1 twisted rib. So now I've taken my yarn back to the rear and we're just going to knit one like normal. Bring the yarn forward again and purl the next one through the back loop also. Now this feels really awkward at first, but you'll get the hang of it. And we're only going to do this for like an inch or so, so it'll be fine. So through the back loop, whoops, see there, I forgot to bring my yarn forward for a normal purl and then go into the back loop of that stitch. Okay, so that's easy enough. Let me get through this row and then I'll show you how the right side row is going to look. Okay, the next row we're back on the right side. So first we're just going to knit the first stitch and then we're going to knit the second one through the back loop. Purl 1, knit the next through the back loop. And you can tell what's coming because you can see the purl bump there. Knit through the back loop and so forth all the way across. And then we're just going to carry on doing this till we have an inch or so. All right, after you finish the ribbing, we're going to just change back. We're going to change to the larger size needles that you've swatched with, and then we're just going to purl a row. Okay, we're back on the right side now, and we're just going to begin to shape the neck with short rows. So you're just going to follow exactly what it says, knit your prescribed number of stitches across, and then I'm going to show you exactly how to do the wrap and turn technique. Okay, so I've knitted a whole bunch all the way across, and I did count the number of stitches as I went. But just to give you an indication how to double check, I counted my way across, but then I took the total, which I know for me was 101, and that means I should have 15 stitches left. So I just double checked that, and I do in fact have that many stitches left. So now we're going to do a wrap and turn. So let me show you what that looks like. On the right side, we're on the right side, we're going to bring our yarn forward, slip a stitch as if to purl, take the yarn back. So you're wrapping that stitch. You're just putting a little collar, a little scarf around that stitch. And then we're going to turn our work, turn your work, and slip that stitch back to the other side. And you can see how that has wrapped that. Then we're just going to carry on. And since we're on the wrong side now, we're going to purl the prescribed number of stitches back the other way. I'll show you that wrap and turn again when it comes up after I purl the number of stitches I need on the way back. All right, after purling the correct number of stitches, now my yarn's already to the front because we're on the wrong side. So we're just going to slip that next stitch as if to purl and take the yarn around it to the back, slip the stitch back so you can see how we've given that a little scarf, we've wrapped it. And then I'm just going to turn my work and make sure my yarn is in the back because I'm going to begin knitting again. So it really is, wrap and turns really are that simple. So now my next instruction is going to tell me to knit to the previously wrapped stitch. And then we're going to knit the wrap and its host stitch together. Okay, this is a good exercise in learning how to read your knitting. If you're wondering how you're going to know when you get there, you can see there's a gap right here. That's where we wrapped the stitch and then knitted, or sorry, purled back the other way. So let me make this bigger and show you. You can see this gap, and you can also tell that that stitch has more than one collar, if you will. It has a cowl, it has a scarf on it, and so that's the stitch we're looking for. You can feel it as you're going along as well. So you can feel that coming up, and you can see it really clearly once you get there. I knit up to it, then I slip it over to the right, and then I like to just grab a hold of that collar, lift that up on the left needle, and then put the original stitch back there with it, and then I knit those two together. Then my instructions tell me to knit two more, and then do another wrap and turn. I want to slide this next stitch as if to purl, wrap it, and then I'm going to slide it back. I go ahead and bring my yarn to the other side because I know I'm going to need to purl. I'm going to have to do that anyway. So whenever you do that is fine. But obviously you want your yarn forward to begin to purl. Then we're going to do the same thing and purl our way back to the previously wrapped stitch. Okay, when I arrive at the previous wrapped stitch on the wrong side or the purl side, again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to slip this over to the right hand needle and I'm going to grab the wrap without splitting a stitch. I'm going to get that up there and then I'm going to purl those two together. I just like to slip it over first so that I can clearly see to lift that wrap up on top. All right, then I'm going to purl two more and I'm going to do the same thing and wrap this stitch by sliding this over, wrap around the bottom, take it back to the left, and I put the yarn on the side I know it's going to be. So for knitting, we want the yarn coming off the back. Then we're just going to carry on with the instructions and I'm going to do those 2 rows a couple more times. So keep track however you want to on a piece of paper or in your knit companion, but you're going to knit short rows 3 and 4 a total of 3 times. Okay, to finish up that short row shaping, there was just a couple other rows where you just go back and forth all the way to the end, knitting the wraps together or purling the wrap together with the stitch that it is. So all we've done here is kind of made this curved. So you can see how this is much taller than on the side. So that's just going to help. It's going to help the neckline stand up and not slouch down the back by adding those extra short rows. Okay, so the only other thing I want to talk about for this week is how to do those increases in the next little section here for the yoke. So on increase row number 1, we're just going to knit the first stitch and then the designer calls for a right lifted increase. Now the way that I show you to do this is by lifting the leg of the next stitch right here. Let me zoom in so you can see that a little better. So what I do is grab the leg of the stitch, the right leg of the stitch below, which is the same thing. In the instructions, she talks about grabbing the purl bump in the back, which is exactly the same thing. So she's just describing it a different way. I'm talking about looking at the right hand leg of this stitch, and she's saying go in from the back and grab the purl bump. The same result is the same. It's just a different way to describe it. So then you're going to put that up on the left hand needle and knit right into that. Okay, so that you've increased 1 stitch. And then we're going to knit 2. And we're going to repeat that all the way across. So again, we're going to go into the purl bump or the right leg of the stitch on the left needle, knit into it, and knit 2. So we're doing a right lifted increase and knitting 2. So we're going to continue doing that all the way across, increasing a stitch and knitting 2. And then when we get to the end of this right side row, I'm just going to go ahead and double count that I have the correct number of stitches. So that's good that she provides that stitch count there so you can go back and fix it if you don't. Okay, the only other thing in this section I want to stress, besides keeping a good count of your number of stitches, is if you get interrupted during an increase row and you need to set this down, is how to learn to read your knitting. So if I push this all the way down so I can see the stitches clearly on the cable, you can tell, like right here, for example, that there's 2 stitches coming out of this one host stitch, if you will. So that's an increase. This was the one we lifted and increased. Then there's 2 knits. Then we have an increase and 2 knits and so forth. So the key here is, not only to get the sweater done, but also to have some practice by learning to read your knitting. Okay, I've completed the first increase row and then the 5 plain rows following that. So I'm just going to go to the next increase row and then I'm going to show you that right lifted increase one more time. And then I'm going to leave you to work through the rest of this up until the bottom of page 2 after the 4th increase row. And then we will place the markers and then I'll see you next week. Okay, so I've just knitted 3, and then I'm going to do the right lifted increase one more time. Let me zoom in and I'll show you that again. So we're going to just take the right hand needle, minus the cat hair, and go into the purl bump on the stitch below, lift that up, and knit right into it. And I'm just going to continue doing that all the way across. So if you haven't done a lifted increase before, I do have a video that shows it in different colored yarn, and I'll link that down below in the video description if you want to go and check that out. Okay, I hope you found that helpful. Next week, we'll carry on with the raglan portion of the yoke, and we'll see how far we get. I would love to see your works in progress either in the Facebook group, tag me on Instagram at Purl_together, and also in the Ravelry group. This week, I'm going to spend a little time putting together some small prizes for participation. And then, of course, we'll have the grand prize package, as I usually do for finished objects at the end of the knit along. I'll post a separate thread for that. So tag me, show me what you got going. I'd love to see them all. All right, be sure to drop a comment down below or in one of the groups if you have questions. There's lots of people that will help you. Sometimes they get to you before I can, and that's great. It's a wonderful community. All right, happy knitting this week. I look forward to seeing your work.